All right, thanks for staying with us on TVC Breakfast. Let's bring you some news update at this time before we go into our next discussion. The U.S. has officially pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement in a move that fulfilled a major campaign pledge. President Donald Trump condemned the accord's draconian financial and economic burdens.
Now, with Trump's action, the U.S. will walk away from nearly every nation in the world on one of the pressing global issues of the 21st century. The pullout will align the U.S. with Syria and Nicaragua as the world's only non-participants in the accord. And French President Emmanuel Macron has categorically ruled out any renegotiation of the Paris Climate Accord, saying Trump's decision to withdraw would harm American interests and citizens. Macron, who took office less than a month ago, says Trump had committed an error for the interests of his country, his people, and a mistake for the future of the planet. And that's the news update. Now looking at Donald Trump and his campaign promises that he seems to be living up to right now. What are the implications? U.S. President Donald Trump is seeking to reduce his country's contribution to United Nations programs. In its budget, the Trump administration stated its intention to reduce or end funding for international organizations whose missions do not substantially advance U.S. foreign policy interests.
Now, these include slashing funding for United Nations agencies such as the World Food Program, UNICEF, and the USAID. Now, if approved by Congress, the proposals will see State Department funding cut by $10.9 billion or 28%, and the Environmental Protection Agency funding cut by $2.6 billion or 31%. Now, the United States spends about $10 billion a year on the UN.
And that is about 22% of the world humanitarian body's total budget. Now let's look at some possible implications if Trump's proposed budget cut, if it is approved by Congress. Now the UN says the proposed aid cut is coming at a time when the world is facing its worst humanitarian crisis since the end of World War II, with 20 million people in Yemen, South Sudan, Somalia, and Nigeria facing starvation and famine. Famine already has been declared in 2 counties of South Sudan, while Somalia has declared a state of emergency over drought.
For decades, the U.S. has been the largest supporter of the World Food Program as part of a bipartisan congressional commitment to averting famine and starvation. In 2016, the U.S. paid 24% of the food program's $8.6 billion budget, or about $2 billion. Trump's proposal of a cut in U.S. aid will worsen an already bad situation, and many displaced persons in war-torn regions would die of starvation.
The U.S. funds 28% of the cost of UN peacekeeping operations in places such as South Sudan, the DRC, that's the Democratic Republic of Congo, Darfur in Sudan, Mali, and the Central African Republic. The Trump administration wants to reduce this to a maximum of 25%. So if the proposal scales through, then the chances of winning the war against insurgency in the Lake Chad Basin would be slim, and so many other implications that analysts have been reeling out. Now, joining us is former President, Nigeria-Germany Business Group, Joe Femi Dagunro. It's good to have you on the show.
Yeah,
and
good
morning.
Good morning.
It's good to see you. You always lost me when you come up with
we have to do that.
But I must say that German is a very good language, I must say.
Yes.
I look forward to learning it someday.
Yes.
But you have to spare me this so you don't lose me.
Come, I'll teach you. You just pay some euros.
That's good. That's good.
So, Femi Dagunro, good to have you on the show.
Good to have you.
Trump's 2018 budget blueprint is set to contain his America First wish list.
Yes.
And with time, we're seeing what is on this wish list. He's delivering on his promise, isn't he?
First of all, you have to know that he made a promise to the Americans. And he said, look, American first. And he wants to make America great again. And he's fulfilling this promise. He's working on these promises. And you don't blame him for that. You know, because a campaign promise, our promises are meant to be fulfilled by good leaders. So whether he's doing it rightly or wrongly is another thing. But people voted him because he has promised them something. And you can imagine the first day he said, listen, I'm going to cut down on this immigration issue. I'm going to send some people back. I'm going to, delay some people. He made all this, and from day one, executive order, and to say, look, this countries, he named some countries that shouldn't come in, and it was followed up. But democracy, people took him up, cases in courts, and he said, okay, let's go further on that. And now, this is not the first time, and this will not be the last time you see Donald Trump, the president of America, doing most of these things. And his budget, he said, this is hard power budget, not a soft power budget. So whatever that means to us or to them, he meant what he said, and he wants to make America great again. So now, if he said, look, the proposal to cut 30.8% of that budget in terms of development aids and whatever, we may not understand what is going on, but he has said that, listen, we can't continue to give money to the people that will not give us the value. So now, coming back to Nigeria, it's unfortunate that we have people who are suffering. When I see images of our brothers and sisters in the IDP camps and whatever, it's appalling. It's sad to see all those things. But now, at the same time, you are hearing that in the same country where we have to go and give them aid, 43-point-something million dollars is being held somewhere, just stagnant. I mean, think of that.
Found in an apartment somewhere.
Not even in the banking system?
Yes, in an apartment. Think of that. And they are reading and hearing and seeing and watching us all over the world. So now, and not only that, another money found, dollars found in a shop somewhere in Lagos, in Legico, wherever, then we are finding money here and there in millions of dollars. And that means there is enough, or there seems to be enough, for us to take care of our people. And not only that, again, you see the arms deal, what is going on, billions or millions of dollars being, stolen here and there. So people are saying that if these people have so much money, why should we still continue to give them money? And not only that as well, you see, you begin to understand that we're spending so much on some of those things that are not necessary. And then if there's going to be famine in part of Nigeria, which we don't all want, but why can't we begin to put steps into the right way to say, listen, herdsmen, don't kill these guys. Yesterday we saw on TV 12 men being buried in Benue. So these guys, they are ready to do farming to feed Nigeria. They are ready to feed other people. Why don't we stop this killing? It's unnecessary. And let the farmers go to the farm and bring out more food, let there be more yields, and then we can take care of our brothers where there's this farming. So there are a lot of things we have to do. And if we are not doing that, we'll still see more of Trumps.
Okay. All right. We'll come back. Let's put you on hold. We'll come back on this. Let's go on a break, and then we come back on what we're discussing right now. Stay with us on TVC Breakfast. Right. Thanks for staying with us. So we are discussing implications to U.S. Cutting aid to United Nations, UNICEF, USAID, and parts of the world. What will it look like, and how will things turn out for the countries and for the agencies and what they're doing across the world? Now we have Joe Femi Dagunro with us in the studio. We have been talking about this. Now, President Donald Trump is living by his promises.
Sure.
So when it comes to trust, people are going to trust him and hold him by his word, because I said so and I am doing it.
Yes.
But let's flip the coin to what UNICEF, to what United Nations, WHO, they're doing in some of these countries, humanitarian activity and all of those assistance and all of that. If this cut goes in through, if the Congress supports it, now they've been calling on, please, we need increased budget, we need increased assistance. And if this cut happens, what would it look like for the people who are vulnerable, for agencies that are vulnerable?
Well, I think it's just sending a signal. It's not too sure. No one is too sure about it now that the Congress will support this, because it's part of their, the State Department. They know what it is for. It's part of their diplomacy program. So they might walk around it. But it's just sounding, I believe it's just sounding the minds of the people. Don't forget, we're talking about 2018 budget. I mean, that is not just, so
exactly.
We're talking about 2018. So, and it gives rooms for, listening to what the people are saying and listen to a lot of, networks that will go around to really stem this. This is just about 1% about American budgets, and so it is still something that I think Trump is just trying to say, listen, don't mess around with me. If I'm giving you something, I need value for it. And this will not be the last, like I said. You know, NAFTA, he said, look, we are going to renegotiate. TPP, he said, listen, we might pull out. And the same thing you have just seen in this Paris Accord, this agreement being signed. Now, listen, I'm ready, but you can't go on it alone. You know, you can't, America cannot be an island on its own. But what he's saying, sometimes there might be, you might see some senses in it. If you are paying so much and all the other people are not paying, and you want them to pay as well, even to pay their dues, you know. So, you know, this has happened before when Boutros Ghali was saying that sometimes America wants to dictate what will be done in the United Nations, and they were not even contributing so much then. They want to, but they will delay the payment so that you can do what they want to be done. So now, I think it's just politics. But this gentleman, Trump, is making a different policy to show that, look, if it's not going to be favorable to America, then I'm not going to be part of it. And we have to learn from it.
This decision has been described as bold and courageous. Now, on the American side, there are those who are concerned that this cut in global aid, in diplomacy and all of that may reduce America's influence globally. But then on this side of the divide, in Africa, for example, should this be a wake-up call for our leaders? And from their body language, does it look like they're even looking at how they can actually cash on this, that this is a window that they can actually take advantage of and begin to look inwards?
I like that word advantage, because most people will always look at disadvantage in every issue. But if you remove that DRS and look at the advantage, and let's begin to talk about the advantage. The advantages is part of American diplomacy. It's part of their policy. They know. But do we even have our own policy, foreign policy? What is our foreign policy? Let's know what our foreign policy is. Lately, we said we are going to close down some foreign missions. Have we done that? Are we saving money to do something else? So these are the kind of thing. American has its own foreign policy, and Trump has to define his own foreign policy of America first. So now, if you look at it, there could be disadvantages. Know that there will be disadvantages. And America would not want to lose that role, that #1 role of, you know, being the leader of the global community, to say, we are doing this, we are doing that. It helps them as well. At the same time, China may come in and say, listen, we are ready in Africa, we have to do more. Germany or European Union will come in and say, yes, we want to help the people. So we are not going to be left alone. What we are saying is that what the statement or what the policy looks like is that, okay, I'm going to cut down. It's not that it's going to take everything out of it. But if it cuts down, maybe the other countries that have not been coming up, or the other nations that they will not say, okay, but let's look at African Union. What is African Union doing to help its own people as well? We have to be looking at it. We have to have our own policies. African Union must come and say, listen, this is what we are doing. And you can see what happened in Gambia. They came up to that level in terms of military, in terms of defense. Yeah. Something happened. But let's begin to look at sustainable development goals within our own continent and see this is what we want to do to benefit ourselves. It is not always we have to be going to say, give me this, and for everything that has been given to you, something has been taken out. Don't forget. So now we have to look at how much are we giving out and how much are we getting. So we have to revise all those things as well. If World Bank is saying that, listen, you know, before it used to be 1981 or something, 1991, it said, okay, the average earnings per day, living standard of Africans or generally developing countries about, you know, maybe $1.9 per day. But now they said it has gone down. You know? I
remember the late Kenyan historian Ali Mazrui, Professor Ali Mazrui, said sometime back that Africa just does not appreciate what it has in terms of bargaining chip.
That's right.
That if Africa, for example, decided not to sell aluminum to the developed world, the airline industry will come crashing.
Right.
So is it that we don't even recognize what we really have, or we don't have the willpower to stand eyeball to eyeball with those people and decide it has to be in our interest too?
You have to look it from both sides. Sometimes we don't even appreciate what we have, or sometimes we don't even know what we have. So if you know what you have and you know the power of what we have, if a president or a country says, I want to have a power budget and not a soft budget, yes, be it. What is your own budget like? You want a budget to be so soft to take care of everybody, or you want a budget that will defend what you have, and you want people, your own country, men and women, have to be in support of what you have. And that is, look at in the areas of mining today, we have not explored that area to the level of saying that, listen, let's have investors in that area that will really bring enough to sustain that industry. If you look at Namibia, they brought investors into that, and they are sustaining the economy more on mining. And that is one area we have to begin to look into. There are some areas we have not been able to tap the resources.
All right, let's look into, if you just mentioned some countries now, but let's take a cue from Rwanda.
Right.
Rwanda is turning things around from all the reports we're getting,
Right.
and all of that. Now, President Paul Kagame is one man that seemed to be the strongest man in the country that
Right.
is championing the cause. We
Right.
remember the story of in the United Arab Emirates, how Dubai came to be and all of that. In the Nigerian situation, we don't have those kind of strong men that can come together to decide and champion a direct vision. Because, yeah, sometime was talking about the Nigerian dream, for instance, where Nigerians don't even understand if there is a dream for them, as the case may be. Is that where we should even be looking at, crafting something that Nigerians can hold on to say that together we will stand in this and then ensure things work?
You see, I like Rwanda. I've been to Rwanda a couple of times. I always, I love that country. And this, I tell you what, this is a country. I saw some people jogging at about 1 a.m. In the morning, and I said, oh, and ladies and everybody jogs around, and nobody, and the street is so clean. And you know, I think you begin to see. It's good for us to have such a man. In Africa, forget about the military background, whatever they said. The people have voted him again, and it's there. And but it's a vision, and until we begin to have more visionary leaders that will take us. Every Nigerian has a dream of living in a country whereby you live with 24-hour electricity, whereby you know, water will flow, the sun is there, whereby you don't need to have problems. You know, but now it's unfortunate that some of these visionary leaders, most young men and women that are supposed to be there, they are not really there. And when they get there, the system, you know, forces them or coerces them into doing what is in existence. And that is why we need a reform in our civil service. It has to begin from there. We need a reform in our civil service.
In every sector.
Yes, and that possibly might sweep off some of these people that don't want this country to grow.
Now, let's look at where some of these funds that Trump plans to divert funds from to things like military, for example. He's planning to add more funds for the Palestinians, for example, pulling away from Egypt and countries like that. What does that say in itself? I mean, this is all happening at a time when terrorism, all kinds of violence is going on across the world.
I tell you what, most of these things are politics. Behind the scene, we may not know why. But you see, you want strategic development and strategic favor from certain aspects, from certain areas of the world. And he has a reason for doing that. Don't forget, it's a close ally to Israel. So if you say you are developing the defenses, the military system of the Palestinians, he has a reason for that. Don't forget that at the same time you have the Islamic fundamentalists that may want to use an advantage of Palestinians being left, and they just come into that and make them to be stronger. So if you are there first and you are supporting them, you may, at the end of the day, you help to make them strong, and you are in control in a way, so that before you allow the military the Islamic fundamentalists to get in there and begin to, you know, fund them, then you are losing them. So better support them right now so that they don't look the other way. And that is one of the things that I think Trump might want to do regarding that. He wouldn't want to equip them to fight Israelites, you know, the Israelis rather. You see, so those are the areas you have to begin to look at. Fundamentally, you know, he said in his one of his policy that the American defense budget has always been, in the past few years, has been so bad. I think they have about 600 ships, and they are now having about 200. Just look at what happened in Nigeria. This is the same thing President Buhari said he was going to do, and we have seen the tremendous change, the development. He has put in money into defense, and you can see our men and women in uniform, they are very motivated than before. And you see that
But health is likely to suffer if this plan goes through. People are talking about 1 million people likely to die from HIV/AIDS if Trump has his way with this reduction in...
let's bring in Foladele to give us updates on social media before we go ahead in here. Fola, good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
How are you?
Good morning, Mr. Dagno. Good to see
How
you.
you doing?
All right, so let's find out what people are saying online. And believe me, they're saying a lot.
They will say a lot.
Yes. Lothrop Stoddard says, most U.S. foreign aid goes to high birth rate, black African nations, Israel and Muslim nations, the biggest threats to a positive human future.
Whoa.
Greg says, cut off all foreign aid, no more dollar diplomacy, pull out of NATO and UN, let other nations carry us for a few decades. Chuck Woolery says, all of these socialist nations freeload off the United States. They have gotten away with it forever. Trump says no more and everyone goes nuts. Melinda Williams says Trump wants to defund UN and is against America sending foreign aid to anyone unless it's to sell arms to brutal Saudi Arabia. We talked about this the other day, of course. William Benedict says, great to hear that we have a real leader finally. And someone replied to that saying, real leader? He just ticked off the rest of the world. I thought he was going to bring everyone together. Most of the world disapproves. Thank you so much. I'll be off to your way now.
Thank you very much, Fola, for all that. That the dimension of people's response to all of this goes a long way. And if you get the response of Americans, a lot of them seem to be happy with the development of cutting aid from across the world and ensuring that homeland is developed and all of that. But if we take it from there and look into putting things broader, we're talking of the influence, the American influence across the world earlier on. We see that China is coming up. China is trying to permeate into all countries and all of that. What scenario will play out if US is trying to, cut down on some of the aid and China trying to increase funds to many of these countries?
More like China rising.
Yes, I said it earlier that you will see other nations coming around to say, look, we will support you. It's a political thing and it's about economic agenda. Lately you see that Chinese government, especially the leader, has been going around visiting virtually all the countries around the world, one-on-one, sending his people down there. And we are seeing the impact. See, all these nations too, they want to rise and say, yes, look, these people are no longer doing business as usual with us. Let's give them a hit and let them realize we're still here. I think, like I said, Trump is going to give a lot more knuckles to people and say, listen, I'm here. You better listen. You better work with me.
And Angela Merkel of Germany has said, look, okay, it's time for us to begin to
exactly. She
look
said
inwards.
it.
We can't continue to rely on the US.
There will still be allies, no doubt about that. But the same thing happened in the European Union. Germany was funding possibly about 70% of European Union bills. But until when Schroeder came in, and I said, listen, Bundeskanzler Schroeder said, listen, enough is enough. If all are sitting down here, then you have to pay your bills as well. And then it was worked out. So sometimes you expect this for people to sit back and say, yeah, it's true. Because you can't be paying 70% or 65% of the total bill, and Portugal will enjoy the same thing that you. So it happens in a global policy. So I think it's just a sign of good things to come.
All right, Joe Femi Dagunro, President of Nigeria-Germany Commission, thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you so much.
Was
haben Sie gesagt?
Ich habe gesagt,
Nigeria-German Business Group. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah. Well, this is where we come to the end of today's edition, and this week's edition of the program. On Monday, we'll be back again. It's going to be a lovely weekend, and it's been rainy all the way. So we're going to leave you with the weather outlook for major cities across the world. I am Mike Okwache.
And I am Ngozi Alebudu. Have yourselves a beautiful weekend.